Today we've got Chris Jankulovski. He is the CEO and founder of Remote Staff. It's an outsourcing operation here in Makati in Philippines. He has been in the game for over 10 years now and has a fantastic personal journey and message as well. So he can help you directly with all of your outsourcing needs and is actually a very experienced and successful businessman himself.
My name is Chris Jankulovski. I'm the CEO and founder of remotestaff.com or .com.au or .co.uk. It's a business I founded about 10 years ago as a result of taking a year off from some health adversities that I had. I had overcome cancers and kidney operations and everything. So I took time out and said, right, I need a year off. And that was in 2006. And I was a marketing consultant at the time, and I was consulting for one guy in the wealth creation info marketing space. He was doing an amazing job, but he had a team of people that were all looking up to him. And yet he gave me $1 million budget to spend in his advertising in half a year. And I couldn't utilize his team properly. So I hired a team of Filipinos, about 30, to represent his account. And that was the birth of Remote Staff, because I was in Australia, in Sydney, at Bondi Beach, working to service this client and this marketing budget. And I fell in love with the people that I hired, and I addressed the questions on how do I keep them accountable working from home? How do I have them working as a unit remotely? How do I all integrate in a way that we could deliver and outperform and compete with the Australian marketing team? And so my experience in that was the birth of not just Remote Staff, but the birth of me saying, this is a real business solution. We really have a competitive edge, because when the cost is so low, we don't have to outperform the Australians. In my case, being Australian, we just have to meet the same standards if possible. And at 70% less at the same standards, it's astounding. So as a result, about 7 months later, when I long finished that marketing consulting gig, I expanded on the business. And that was November 2007, yeah. There was some experiences that I had in setting up Australian teams and Filipino teams. What I noticed was in Australia, I could hire the right person, put them at that location, the desk, and say, okay, you're a designer, solve our design problems, come up with solutions. Whereas in the Filipino landscape, when I hire a designer and put them in that spot, say, okay, you're our designer, solve design problems, it wasn't so straightforward. There was so much more involvement from my side because they weren't asking questions. Like my Australian staff were almost like I had to campaign with them to get what I want done. Whereas with the Filipinos, there was no campaigning. It was almost like this yes wall, yes sir, yes. And then at the beginning, you're like, oh, this is cool. But then when you get the results back, you're like, oh, this isn't what I want. You should have asked more clarifying questions. And then you realize you have to put in this energy and effort of keeping them more accountable and more empowered. Whereas in Australia, accountability, or anywhere in the world, staff who, when you hire professionals, they're already accountable and they're already empowered. But in the Philippines, that's something you notice missing. Well, on entry level, senior levels, you realize that they're accountable but may not necessarily be empowered. And then senior levels, you get accountability and empowerment with the staff capacity. But at the beginning, when I started this, I didn't know this. And I'm sure many clients would be surprised that when you put up a team and set up a team, that you've got to be mindful of that warning sign of, wow, these are yes people, and they're not going to be confrontational. So you're the one that has to squeeze the rock almost. I built the initial team of 30. Putting the team was putting the team together was easy, but not necessarily getting them to perform to a certain standard. My efforts in Australia were very different compared to my efforts that I needed to do in the Philippines when I first started. The effort that I needed to do in the Philippines required a lot of me to micromanage initially. I couldn't just give them an instruction, show them how it's done, and leave them to it. I really had to be involved every step of the way. Not only did they did it, but somehow not only provide them a clear guidance and say, just operate within these boundaries because they want that. But I also had to be empowering them along the way to say, look, it's okay. Now that you've done it, I need you to apply yourself. I need you to have your own voice in this matter. Like, let's create some performance agreements between each other and say that if I give you this, like, I had to spell out everything. So a lot in the Western world is a given. It's assumed that, you know, when I give you this, that I expect a certain result back, and you're already aware of my expectation and needs, and you already know like what you do and how that plays a part in the overall picture. Whereas in the Philippines, they're kind of a suppressed society, and when you give them a role, they just feel like their responsibility should be exclusively focusing on that cog and that wheel that they belong in, not at all interested in the overview of that whole engine, so to say. So they don't understand. And also when you try to show them the engine of where they're focused on, they can't connect, you know, how their role plays an overall effect at delivering that result. So in the Western world, we assume that our staff can easily get this quite easily. But I think in the remote landscape, the virtual landscape, these things are not that easily identified. And the staff, the gap between what you think they understood versus what they really understood can sometimes be a chasm, you know. So that these things, unfortunately, over time, reveal themselves. They don't necessarily reveal themselves at the beginning, and especially because they speak such good English and communicate well, doesn't mean that they comprehended well. So it's often you can't assume. 10 years ago when I started Remote Staff, there was 200,000 full-time people working in the BPO sector of the Philippines. Now, 10 years later, there's 1 million. And of that 1 million, there are 900,000 working in the call center customer support sector, 100,000 working in various other roles, medical, legal, design, development, SEO, and so on. Whereas 10 years ago, that really represented very few. It was majority call centers. As a matter of fact, you think Philippines, you think call centers. I think the diversity of this talent is, from 10 years ago, I would come across a lot of smart people who were like a blank canvas, no work experience, but they're very smart. 10 years now later, I'm seeing a lot of smart people with experience and exposure. And that's really refreshing because you've got this great labor, this great work ethic, this intelligence now with work experience, Western work experience, which wasn't visible 10 years ago. So it's a compounding maturity. And one thing I noticed 10 years ago was we could not find proper managers in our departments. Whereas now we are finding it a lot easier to find capable, sophisticated leaders that can properly manage. Because I think leadership and management are skills that correlate. So if you can't manage properly, you can't lead. Or if you can't lead properly, you can't manage properly. So now we're seeing this gap bridged much closely. Whereas initially, 10 years ago, we saw a lot of Filipino managers who are like, hey, come under my wing, I look after my own kind of mentality. Whereas now they're more broader in their view, and they're looking at like objectively the business needs, and that it's more than just self-interest. That the greater good and the greater effort of everyone can help everyone benefit. And what's that story in some of the books I've read? At the beginning, there was a lot of people wanting to get to the first class cabin of a train. So every business is a train. And so now there's more and more business leaders who understand in the Philippines that the goal is not to get to first class, the goal is to get the train moving collectively faster, to get everyone to a destination faster. So more and more of these people are thinking like this, but they do cost a certain amount of money, and they are over 80,000 peso in wages per month in the Philippine peso when you want to get those kind of people on board. That's the starting price. Whereas 10 years ago, that price might have been 40 or 50. So they almost doubled, but they were nowhere near as sophisticated as they are today. 10 years ago, remote staffing was like a safe bet to go, let's just test the waters. Remote Staff as a company has become an incubator for a lot of these businesses, that some want only a few staff, 1 or 2 or 3, and others want teams. What we've seen is that on average, a business would use us with a team of either 30 to 100, go test the boundaries for 2 years, see them standardize, structure their operations before they would go out on their own. We've helped 4 large corporations mature from remote to office space to scale an office to getting their own operations here. So it's becoming a much more viable business. And to be honest, it's because of what I just mentioned about management. Because you're still going to need to fly in some Australian or Western managers here to manage your general operations. That's always a necessity. But you got more and more people you can truly count on that make a difference in their departments, whether it's finance, marketing, technology, customer support, recruitment, whatever industry you're in. There's more and more professional managers that you can build on. 10 years ago, when we were getting inquiries, 60% of people had no experience, no exposure, no idea of the country. Now it's reversed. 60% have exposure and experience to the Philippines. The idea that outsourcing is such a scary thing 10 years ago was more of a reality. But now the competitive advantage that it gives you has made SMEs move towards outsourcing. 25%, it's reported, have made this move. That's a significant amount. Just about all corporates have done this move a long time ago, 10 years ago. But now, 10 years later, 25% of SMEs have done it. And the next 10 years ahead of us, I believe another 25% will easily, if not more, do so. It's easier than ever before to hire directly if you want. It's easier than ever before to deal with more mature companies that are here on the ground like us that can help bridge that cultural gap and offer the support to protect your investment of energy and time that you're doing to establish operations here. More and more Filipino labor we've experienced with Western employers helps people get started right at the beginning. And I think because more and more business colleagues have tried it with mixed results, encourages people today more so to give it a go for themselves. I think, that saying, what they say, I could tell you what to do, or you might have heard it, and you'll remember it for an hour. I might show you how to outsource, and you're gonna remember it for the day, but I'm gonna get you to do it, and you're gonna remember it for life. So we hope that we could give that opportunity to get people to do it themselves obligation free, without locking them in contracts and all this kind of stuff. Prove it to yourself that you can do this. I think that's the best recipe. And do it in a safe environment where you're not exposed to proprietary risks. You're not exposed to dealing with somebody that is not reputable. We just want to minimize your risks. And so whereas when you go out directly, you're dealing with people who have totally different concepts of what their obligations to you as an international employer might be. Also, Filipino culture, I mean, these people, if they don't get a paycheck, I mean, they're not going to feed their family. So these people also want assurances, such as an agency like us, who guarantees their pay, in order to guarantee their commitment that, look, you can work professionally from home or from our offices. And we, as a result of guaranteeing your pay, we want you to commit your energies and dedication to our clients, because they're going to commit time and energy to work with you to get you performing at a certain level. So that's where the whole ecosystem works. And it's been evolving over the years. It certainly has, yeah. So often somebody will come to us for the first time, hire somebody, and it turns out really bad. Like, day 2, day 3, they cancel and they quit on the whole thing. I think outsourcing is too important to give up on it so quickly. You got to really judge it correctly, that you just had the wrong talent. You were unfortunately not given somebody that we all thought was viable for you. But that person had different intentions or wasn't resonating with your work style or your company objectives. These things happen, and sometimes you're not going to really know until you start working with them. No matter all the best recruitment checks and measures can be in place, it might not always turn out at the beginning. And if it doesn't turn out, that doesn't mean that's a loss. The loss is when you've put in a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and then they quit on you, or they go south, or you have to terminate them because you just can't get them up to speed. Those moments happen as well, and you've got to get real with the idea of saying, believe in the people, but if they're weak at it and you keep insisting to do it and they're weak, get real. Give up on it. Stop. Get a replacement. Try a new talent to work with. Don't overinvest your energies. So you have to be very diligent when outsourcing, especially when remote working, as to when do you call it quits or when should you continue. Because some clients are just excessively generous and they just let it ride for too long, and as a result they burn out. Rather than, okay, get me a replacement, I need somebody with this and this capacity. This person just doesn't have that exposure, and it's going to take me too long to get them there, and they may not even get there. So you got to recognize people right away. And the problem with our SOHO segment, which represents 60% of people we service, is that they're not familiar working with staff. Often it's their first staff they hire offshore, or they may have only 1 or 2 people in Australia. They don't have, as employers, enough experience and exposure to distinguish some of these things that we're referring to, unfortunately. And they don't even have their own processes properly established to understand, the needs of what that business needs from that individual. They're not documented enough. At the end of the day, we have all products, we have services. We all have to recognize that our uniqueness, because we can be emulated, we can be copied by anybody these days. The landscape is radically changing. Our point of difference in any business that we establish is our people. We have to recognize that if we evolve as a business, if we grow as a business, it's an evolution that occurs via the people we work with. So the sooner as a businessman you recognize that you're not in business because you have a product or service, you're in business because you have people that can deliver that product or service to an ongoing order system and repeat business that just helps you grow and grow. I think if people are then our business, then how we treat them isn't about being nice and taking them out to dinners and lunches. And I think everyone wants to be needed and wants to be recognized. Everybody wants to grow, and everyone wants to become all that they can be in this life. They want to know that what they're working on matters and how. And so the more you can work with people on not just your mission and visions, but you got to address the whys. You got to make sure that they're in line with why are we doing this? And look, they may not have to always be as juiced as you are about your vision or mission, but they need to be in line. They need to at least get it. And if they get it, then you've got a vehicle through your team that you can build a deeper empathy with your market through them. Because if these guys don't connect with why you're doing what you're doing, then they don't know where they belong in terms of the fulfillment and service that they're providing to their customers and the business objectives of the client. So that's a lot easier said than done. It takes time to get this done. And unfortunately, when you've got it done and you finally got it where you think it should be, it's going to evolve. It's a yin-yang thing. It changes. You get it working, you don't get it working. It's an invisible, tangible thing, just like branding. So when you start a business, you don't think much about branding. You know, what is this? But it's actually really important. Owning and understanding how people perceive you, how they judge you, how they assume where you belong in the whole landscape of things, very important conclusions. Same with the staff that work for you. They need to know where you as a business fit, what are the services and values that the market see in what we do collectively. So these things need to be worked on. Everything about what we do, it's all because as entrepreneurs, you know, we have a desire to make our millions. Yeah. We want to live life on our terms. And we want to be all that we can be. Yeah. And we want, I think we all have this innate thing in us where, okay, we're alive, and we recognize that life is a gift. And we're living a life on your terms, you recognize it's a gift. And you kind of want to give as much back. You want to leave this world where your life is counted in some way, that it matters in some way, that you've left it a slightly better place than when you arrived. And I think that drives us all more to become all that we can be and express ourselves more. You know, because when you've made it and you've got all the money in the world, that doesn't drive you as much. What drives you? It's these little things. You know, the impact we make on others, yeah. So when I could use the words, if you're young, I could use the words hack, because I feel like my 7-year-old just wants to hack everything. But to succeed in outsourcing, you have to recognize the weaknesses. You can't hire somebody who's your assistant to then do HTML for you, to then write for you, to then chat support for you, then customer support for you, SEO for you, and do everything else for you. You can't stretch them too far. So one of the first things you have to learn in outsourcing is you have to really segment, specialize their needs. You can't bring them too far. We found that 1 is best, 2 is possible, 3, you're overdoing it already. So 1 to 2 focus is maximum. The best is 1 focus. So the moment you have somebody, you know, because you're small or whatever, and you're hiring one person because of your budget restraints, and you want them to have 7 different focuses, just know it's not going to work. Okay? So yeah, it might sound promising at the beginning. You might have an amazing talent that's possible to do that. But as volume picks up, they're not going to sustain it. So recognize that's okay to start this way, broad, but the moment you pick up pace, you must segment and categorize. People are too slow to categorize. They wait till they burn out. They wait till they recognize and go, oh shit, we need 6 full-time customer support staff, not this one person who's focusing on 7 other focuses. They take it too far before they see that what they have to do. That's one mistake. The second mistake is they get it, they work hard, they build it, get it performing to a standard, celebrate, go, woohoo, I can't believe my staff remotely can deliver the same result as my Australian staff, and then turn their backs and assume it's going to continue. No. So that's the second mistake they all do. They get it there, then they just drop it off. They no longer communicate. They don't realize that there's a human being on the other side of that connection. And they put in all that energy and effort and assume that now it's automatic. Not going to happen. You'll have to always feed. You'll always have to recognize that individual. You always have to keep that person engaged and stimulated. You can't expect somebody to work in an isolated, independent environment and still be in touch with your company kind of pulse. So they can go cold on you pretty fast. And the last thing is communication. When you're communicating, you're managing people, which a lot of people don't have remote management experiences. If I could sum it up in one word, show me. If you're going to manage me remotely, just show me what you bloody want. Then the staff can comprehend and go, I see what you expect from me. And then they can ask questions. And you can see in them what the scenario is. So I recommend using not just chat or voice calls. Go use Zoom. Go use video. See the facial expression. See, did they really get that? Don't assume that they did. Because you're going to hear yes, yes, yes on the other side. Really? You have to read between the lines. So they're the 3 tips. And then if I was going to give 3 tips to get started really fast, think of clear, no broad ranged outcomes. You've got to be specific in your outcomes and your desires in what you expect and what you want from that person. You must have that clear. Because sometimes when you hire somebody full-time, especially at the beginning, you often wonder when you start out a business, you go, oh my God, what is this person going to do all day? You really have to think before you hire all the things that they're going to need to do for you. And it's funny that as you grow in business, then you're always understaffed. So that's always a challenge. The second tip I could give to successfully starting in outsourcing is treat them like a real dedicated partner resource. Treat them like a dedicated resource. The more you can recognize as a human being on the other side of the internet, that they've got families to look after, their time is moved out of their families to commit to you. Honor it. Don't, just because they're remote, don't just, treat them like output orientated. These aren't freelancers. These aren't project-based people. These are real dedicated staff. I can almost call them employees, but they're just virtual. So don't ignore them. And the last tip is celebrate. I mean, when you get a win or when things work out, give that feedback, celebrate. And if things aren't working out, really don't let them figure that out. Formalize it, let them know. Listen, we need to work at getting you up here. Because too many people just are quick to judge. Since you've made that commitment, you might as well give it a real good go. I mean, how nice is it to be surprised in life? And I love being surprised when you invest in people, you give it a go, you really try hard, and they really live up to it. It's like, oh, I've won the lottery, it's amazing. So I urge that experience for any businessman to experience it for themselves. with remote staff as a business, we hold a unique position in the market because there's a lot of office solutions. There's a large freelance market center where you can hire anybody you want these days, on demand almost. And then there's us, which is a hybrid of the two. We provide at Remote Staff the type of involved HR, recruitment, and support services that you could find in an office setup, but in the virtual landscape. Whereas in the virtual landscape, in the freelancing market center, you don't have that support structure. You don't have that full involvement. Whereas you kind of like in the virtual landscape, you hire somebody, it's between you and that staff, you're left on your own. Whereas with Remote Staff, you have us involved with you on that journey to improve the odds of your outsourcing success. We specialize in 1 to 15 hires in the remote landscape. We believe that if you're going to hire 1 or 15, keep it remote. If you're going to hire more than 15, don't do it remote. Just put it in the office. It's better. And that's why we offer both an office solution for those that want bigger teams, because a bigger team is easier to drive everyone in one direction. It's easier to standardize and uplift their conduct and performance. Whereas when they're remote and scattered everywhere, training becomes harder. No matter what they all say, go to meetings and everything. Directing a team to change from this degree to that degree, not so straightforward. Driving a large virtual team, which I've grown Remote Staff to 66 people remotely in-house. And now we have 90 in the office. Mate, was that a lot of energy? And also, when you've got a manager remotely managing a department, it becomes very difficult to recover when 1 or 2 of your managers aren't properly managing these departments. Whereas in an office, when you've got departments and managers, and one manager isn't performing well, it's easier to let go of that manager and replace him and sustain your department from, to continue working. Whereas virtually, when you let go of that manager, it's almost like your department collapses. So that's a risk. That's why we say stick it to the 1 to 15 remotely. You save a shitload more money. And business-wise, there's a lot of advantages. We can hire nationwide. We're not stuck at hiring just in the center of the business district in Makati. Skill ranges, we've got far bigger ranges to get these people. And we can get people remotely to be as effective and efficient as anyone in the office, if not more. We find that our virtual team is always more effective in terms of efficiencies than our office base. Because in the office, they're caught up in a lot of meetings, the water cooler experiences and all this. And overall, on Mondays, when they travel from the provinces, they're fatigued. And, whereas at home, they're alert, they're committed, they respect that opportunity. They're very grateful for their financial independence that they've gained from working at home, and guaranteed by us. They don't just jump. When they make that career decision to work for you at home, they mean it. Whereas at the office, if things don't work out, they hop around much more easier in this landscape. So there are advantages in both landscapes. There are weaknesses in both landscapes. So if you're a small business starting out in outsourcing, it's safest from a cost point of view and getting the right talent remotely than in an office. But if you want to start out and you've got the confidence to commit to a team and a resource here, it's safer in the office. A little bit about me. So other than the health adversity and cancer scares I had back in 2005, which I've survived, I also recently had 2 brain tumors removed in September 2016. It's left half my body not moving so well. It all works. It's just that the electrical pathways are being chopped. So I'm doing a lot of rehabilitation. But as a result, I was completely almost I went from an average of an active life of 9 to 16,000 steps down to 29 to 100 for 2-3 months. That has left me as a diabetic, and I have visual challenges. I have so many mobility difficulties, and I realized that, you know what, this hereditary condition I have is going to kill me one day, and maybe sooner than what I realized. So I thought, with my 2 young boys that I have, I better write a book just in case I do pass away early. Then I don't want to have any regrets. I want to make sure that my boys know me, know the adversities I've overcome. And unlike all my other friends around me who've had adversities, their careers dip, their wealth dips. I mean, everything about that, a challenge of adversity affects their overall lifestyle. For me, it's bizarre because it's been the opposite. So every time I have a brain operation or overcome cancer, I seem to increase my wealth. I seem to be more on path in my higher purpose of work. I seem to be making a big impact. And as a result, I decided to write a book. I've been at it now for 8 months. I've got an Australian ghostwriter and a full-time Filipino writing assistant. I've created a website called justkeepgoing.com. And it's a place where I want to share for those who've confronted a traumatic experience in life, a horrific thing that they're grieving from or need to overcome. These things are real. And in life, we go to school and universities hoping to get an education. But these experiences in life force you to change, force you to learn. And I've had a lot of that imposed on my life. And I've came out stronger on many occasions. And so I'm writing the book to share those perspectives in the hope that everyone can gain something from that. And hopefully, as a result of reading the book, learn what matters in their life more, start doing what matters in their life more, and start doing it now, recognizing that they have an urgency with life, because time just ticks by, waits for no man, and it goes a lot faster than we all realize. So my condition governs that I'm going to have a shorter life expectancy, and therefore living on a high purpose, living a dream life, making the money and living life on my terms is important for me to achieve sooner than later. I don't have that luxury for later. So justkeepgoing.com is a project where I want to empower those who don't have to have that adversity to gain the distinctions I've been forced to learn. We hope that we can make a lot of people. It's my contribution to the greater good. It's not an endeavor I intend to make money from or become a celebrity or do talks or videos. It's more like, hey, take it or leave it. This is my gift. You know, and that's that project. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.